In this video, we're going to take a photo and make it a little bit more fitting for the holidays and also make it a little bit more fitting for winter. So we'll take a photo that starts like this and we'll turn it into a photo that looks like this for no other reason than it's fun. Okay? Not everything has to have a business purpose or anything like that. I think it's just cool. It's fun. I'm using a photo of a cardinal here. You could use a photo of a dog. You could use a photo of a person. You could use a landscape photo. As you see what I'm about to do with this, you'll see different ways that you can customize it for whatever type of photo that you want to add this effect to. Okay? So let's go ahead and get started. This is the photo that I'm going to start with. And I just thought, number one, I'm thinking Christmas, green and red. We actually have green and red in this photo, but the way we take it, I'm going to add some more green to it. But I thought the cardinal that started off with the red theme of Christmas, and we'll add a little bit more green to it as well. One of the ways we're going to do this is with a texture. So what I did is I did a search for green grunge texture. All right, you will come up with, as you can see here, 25,700,000 results. You will come up with a lot of results when it comes to this stuff. And there's a lot of websites that have free downloads, especially for personal use. So what I would say is go do a quick Google search, find yourself a texture. If it's on a free website, there's a lot of websites out there. I use one. I use one called, let's see here. I use the dailytexture.com. That's another really nice website where they've got very high quality textures and tutorials that you can download and purchase on there. But this is your first time, try one of the free ones. Just be aware of terms and conditions. It's usually only free for personal use, and personal use would mean I can share on social media and make a print for family or friend or anything. But once it gets past that, you really need to look at the terms and conditions of wherever you're getting this stuff from, because you might need to make a donation or you might need to buy something. So I found a free texture and I downloaded it. And then I popped it. I just opened it up in Photoshop, put it onto a layer. It was a little bit smaller. So what I did is I just clicked on that layer, edit, come down here to free transform, and then you can just stretch this to meet your needs for your photo. Don't worry about losing quality. It's a texture. Nobody's going to know. So once we get the texture to fill the screen, I'm going to hide that layer for now. Click back on my background layer. So I want to put a texture over this. And the way so many people put textures on photos is they just go in here and they just change the blend mode and maybe work with the opacity or something like that. So that's a good starter way to go. But we want to do this a little bit more, with a little bit more intent to it and a little bit more creativity. And when I use a texture, I like to protect the subject, or at least work it in with the subject. So what I'm going to do in this case, I'm going to select one of my my quick selection tool. Just grab a selection tool. It's got to be at least the quick selection or the magic wand or that new object selection tool. And I'm going to go up here and I'm going to hit select subject, because there's a pretty defined background here. It's got a pretty good blur to it. So Photoshop's going to do a decent job at selecting the subject. It's just going to do a base selection around it. It's always going to be up to us to refine it. So I'll come over here to select and mask. On the left-hand side, I'm going to use that second brush, the second icon from the top left. And I'm just going to refine my selection here, because one of the things that will help sell this is the details. All right. It's the details being sharp and crisp. And you can see how we're able to bring some of those details out. But I'll also paint and I'll let it bleed into the edge a little bit. You can see how it's chipping away at the edge, and I'm actually going to go with that. I want that to happen. I'm even going to work a little bit down on the feet here, because what this is going to give me is a semi-selection. It's not going to be totally selected. It's not going to be totally unselected, and you'll see it in just a second. But some of these little details will really stand out in our final image, which is why I would say take the time to go do this. Okay. Now, once I get that, what we're going to do here is hit OK, and that's going to leave us with a selection. We have our background layer targeted. I'm going to turn on that texture layer on again, and then I'm going to click on that layer. Now, we're going to add a layer mask to this, and all you got to do is just click on the layer mask icon, and that will add a mask. The way to think of this is when you click on this layer mask icon, what's selected will stay. What's not selected goes away. So in this case, what's selected is the bird. The outline around the bird is what would stay, which is not what I want in this case, right? So I can do a couple of different things. I can undo, and I can just go to select inverse. Now everything but the bird is selected. Now when I hit that layer mask, now I get a little bit more what I'm looking for. All right. Or if you ever get a layer mask and it's reverse, just click on the layer mask and just press Command or Control I for invert, and it'll flip white to black and black to white. So now here's where we get to have some fun, and this is where you would change it up for your particular photo. Is we're going to hit B for the brush tool. We're going to set a pretty low opacity here, about 18-20%. Get a large, soft edge brush here, and what we're going to do is we're going to start bringing in part of the background, okay? But before I do that, I want to at least be able to see the background. So your mileage is going to vary on this. I find that multiply works good as a blend mode. I find that screen works good as a blend mode. I find that overlay and soft light also work good as blend modes. So try it out depending on your texture. It's going to work differently for every possible color, but I found I liked screen to be the best here. Gave me a little bit more of that green tint and also some white in here. So it just kind of gave me a little bit more of a holiday type of a style to it. So we've got our brush selected. And the way that this works is if I'm brushing with white, then essentially I'm going to be painting the texture back on. And what I would do is I would actually paint. Remember, we're using a low opacity brush. So I would paint a little bit of that texture back onto the bird. We don't want a perfect edge there. We want the edge to be sharp, but we don't want such a contrast, right? So I would go in there and I would paint a little bit of that texture on. And we're using a low opacity brush, so it just builds up. All right. So you just go through and you can paint a little bit of that texture over the bird, especially over the edges. I wouldn't necessarily do it like that, but I would do it over the edges here, just help blend those edges in and work with that texture a little bit more. All right. See what I meant about the details though? See how those details really, they help sell it. They help pull this give it some depth and dimension to it. And then from here, what I would do is switch it over to black. And now I want to hide things. And so I'm hiding the texture over the branch. Like I feel like the branches should be a little bit more. I feel like the feet should be a little bit more apparent. Hit the left or right bracket key. You can make it larger or smaller. And then I'd go over here and, fill it in over this branch as well. Down here. Again, I'll just bringing part of the original photo back into it. And to me, that's what separates just a quick throw a texture on top of a layer to really making the texture part of the photo. All right. You can paint a little bit in the background here. Use the right bracket key, make my brush bigger, and I can even hide a little bit more of it. Show a little bit more of that background through in the photo here. Another thing you can do is you can play with the texture. I'm going to click on the texture layer here. We were working on the mask layer. I'm going to click on the texture layer. And you can play on the texture layer. You can paint with white and black, and that will change the way that the texture interacts with its surroundings. All right. I'm painting with black here, so you can see it makes it a little bit darker. Still using a low opacity brush. And I can switch it and paint with white. And that gives us a different feel as well. So you can go either way with that, and you can adjust the texture. Even further, click on the texture layer. Go down here, image adjustments, and go down here to hue and saturation. That would be the destructive way to do it, which is fine. I mean, I do it all the time. But if you wanted to be non-destructive, you could also go down to the bottom here under your hue and saturation adjustment layer. Click on hue saturation. So it's a little half white, half black circle, or always to the adjustments panel. There's 3 different ways to do the same thing in just about everything. You could go to our adjustments panel, click on hue saturation. The trick, I can change the hue and the saturation and the lightness if I want to. You'll notice it's changing everything. But there's a little icon here. And what that was, see the little square with that little arrow that points down? If I click on it, it clips it to just affect the layer below. You can see it's got a little arrow pointing down. So that means this hue and saturation is now only affecting the texture layer. It's not affecting the bird. Okay, the bird is on the layer below that, so it's not going to get affected by this. So if you wanted to change the color of your texture, if you couldn't find a good green texture, maybe you found one that was yellow or red or something like that, you can go in here and you can change that hue and you can make it the color that you want it. Okay, and then of course saturation and the lightness too. Okay, so I actually like the way that it was before. The next step that we go, so we've added a little bit more of a holiday theme to this, which you can or can't do. You can do whatever colors you want. The next step we go here is we add some snow. So I did the same thing. I went to YouTube and I did a search for snow overlays. Do a search for snow overlays. Again, you will find free, you will find paid. Make sure you look at the terms and conditions on whatever you're using to make sure that you can actually download it and use it. Most of them, again, are for your personal use. If they are free, then it's just fine for your use and sharing on social media. But again, always look at that stuff. So we go find an image you can download. I downloaded 2. I'll go in here, I'll turn on the layer. So I downloaded 2 and I pasted it onto the image here in Photoshop. It's black and white. All we got to do here is just change your blend mode to screen. Screen will hide the black and keep the white. I did another one here. It's a little bit more fine, little bits of snow with some big ones as well. Again, change this one to screen, and that adds a little bit of a snowy feel to it. And then the last thing that I did is I added a layer mask to it, and I just went through with a black brush, again, a low opacity. I went through in a black brush, and I just made sure I painted it away from key areas. Like, I don't want it over the eyes. The eyes is the last place that I want it over. It's okay to have it over the bird here. And then you have, since I added 2 here, we'd have to do it to another layer as well. But I would keep it away from the eyes. Again, any other place where you wanted to hide it from in your photo where you don't want the snow interfering with it, you can just add that in a layer mask. Okay? And then if you wanted to finish this up through a little bit of text on here, all I did is I took my rectangular marquee tool and I made a selection like so. I added a new layer and I filled it with white or black, whatever color works for your image. And then you can even reduce the opacity a little bit. And then you can see I also threw a type layer on top of there and just put Merry Christmas. So it's just, again, happy holidays. It doesn't have to be during Christmas. This could be something in the winter, the summer, the spring, and fall, whatever happens to work for you. You can put whatever message that you want on there. Okay, so folks, I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you have a great holiday and a very happy new year. And I will talk to you again very soon.